This story of the Templars is where you should begin when you're talking about the story of the founding of the United States of America.
Welcome to the Symbolic Logic Conversation, where consciousness and curiosity interweave into discussion. This is All Square Podcast. I'm your co-host for the evening, R.L. Franks. Joining me, UFO on the level, John Majorowski is joining me, and we have our brother, Scott Wolter, author, forensic geologist from Minnesota, who is here to talk about one of his latest books. You've seen him on the hit show, America Unearthed. Let's learn more about our brother, Scott Wolter. Thank you for joining us, Scott.
Thank you for having me.
I can't believe I finally got through all that.
You did a great
freestyling.
job. I was just waiting to hear archaeologist, and I didn't, so I'm happy.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
There's only a few takes. You did well. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a movie magic. Scott, what brought you to the fraternity? Let's just kick it off like that.
Well, it all started with the Kensington Rune Stone back in July of 2000 when I was minding my own business, running my materials forensic laboratory, American Petrographic Services, which were still in operation and doing quite well now that I've semi-retired, and business has been really good. But at that point, I'd been running that lab for about 10 years, and this strange artifact came into our lab. I was approached and asked if I would conduct a forensic evaluation of the Kensington Rune Stone, and I said to the person, "What's that?"
I'm asking that same question myself right now.
Well, it's very famous in Minnesota, and if you come from the world of alternative history or controversial history, you will know what the Kensington Rune Stone is. And basically, it's a 202-pound stone that was unearthed by a Swedish immigrant farmer named Olof Oman in the fall of 1898 when he was clearing trees in preparation for farming on the property that he was homesteading. And he found this rock with his two sons, oldest sons, Olof Oman Jr. and Edward. And it was Edward, the younger son, who was 9 years old, about to turn 10, who first noticed that there was a long inscription that turned out to be carved in Scandinavian runes. There's 9 lines on the face side, 3 on the split side. And it was taken to Scandinavian scholars at the time who, frankly, now we know, had no idea what they were looking at. And instead of saying those 3 little words, "I don't know," they said, "Oh, it's a hoax." And it was perpetrated by the farmer. How convenient, right?
Right.
And so that started that's how it started off on the wrong track from the very beginning. And scholar after scholar for the next 125 years have basically repeated the same thing just because they simply cannot figure out the runes, the dialect, the grammar, the dating, all the features that are on the stone. But what's really important, and was one of the biggest problems with that artifact, was it was dated using pentatic numbers in Arabic placement. There will be a quiz, so I don't see you writing this down.
I got it right.
Okay.
So it was backwards. It was Arabic. It was backwards.
But it's dated 1362, which of course is 130 years before Chris.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the guy that never set foot on the land we now call the United States of America, that supposedly discovered it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know that's nonsense now, but this thing really threw a wrench in the accepted paradigm of the history of North America, and it still does to this day. But anyway, that came into my lab. I did a forensic study. I compared the weathering of tombstones of known age that had like mineralogy, same mineral composition, grain size, same weathering environment, and I concluded that the weathering of the inscription was older than 200 years because on the tombstones, they began to come off after 200 years. On the runestone, they were gone. So it's older than that. And
What's
that's
the stone
all I
made
can
out of?
say.
I've never asked that question.
Okay. Again, write this down because there will be a quiz. It's a Paleo-Proterozoic meta-greywacke. So it's a dirty sandstone, a texturally, mineralogically immature sandstone that has been cooked and heated through metamorphism. So it's a very strong rock, a very durable rock. But for me, the thing that was really key, and the rock is the key,
Hmm.
is that it had a lot of minerals for me to choose from to potentially do some relative age weathering work. And it actually worked out beautifully. And so I concluded that it was authentic because they claimed that it was a late 19th century hoax, and that 200 years and older than 200 years is from 1898 when it was pulled out of the ground, because it hasn't been in a weathering environment since.
Right.
So you go back from there in, upstate Minnesota, and you've got nobody there. In the latter, the late 1600s, there was nobody there. So, it's either a late 19th century hoax or it's not. And I said, it's not, therefore it must be genuine. And that's when all the trouble started.
How did you even get into this subject?
Well, what happened was there was a guy down in Texas who was a linguist. His name was Dr. Richard Nielsen, and he was also an oil engineer, worked in the oil business. But he's Danish, and when he was trying to learn the Swedish language when he was a young man, he decided to study the Kensington Rune Stone. So he became very versed in the history of the stone, and he studied the language, and he started to figure things out and say, well, these things did exist, and maybe this thing isn't a hoax. But what he realized, to his credit, is that what would he thought convince people is if there was a hard scientific investigation that would prove that it was authentic, instead of the language, the runes, the dialect, and grammar, which is more of an art form in some ways, not hard science. So he went to the University of Minnesota Duluth, where I graduated from college, went to the geology department. He talked to my old professors, and they said, call Scott Wolter.
How old were you at this time?
I was 40. Geez, it's been 25 years. I'll be 67 next week. So 41, I think.
Happy birthday.
Pardon?
Happy birthday next
Thank
week.
you. Thank you.
This is before you were a Mason.
Long before I was a Mason, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, this is 2000. And so when I published my findings, I remember saying to myself, oh, good for them. They got one, right? And you have to understand, in the work I do, mainly in the construction field, and then the next year, of course, we worked at the Pentagon looking at all the fire damaged concrete from the jet fuel fire that happened on 9/11.
Wow.
So we've done a lot of really interesting projects. I've worked on murder cases, all kinds of things. But the Rune Stone was really a challenge, and it was fun. And then when I finished and I thought, well, good for them, they got one, I thought that would be it. But then the backlash came, and it was hard, it was nasty, and it was personal. And so that, when that happened, I kind of said to myself, okay, I'm not perfect. Maybe I made a mistake. Point it out. I'll fix it. I didn't make a mistake. They just didn't like the result. Well, that's when I said, tough hop, people. Sometimes life doesn't go your way. So that's what happened.
So did you just, ever since you were little, wanted to become a new term that I heard today, forensic geologist?
No. Actually, I went to UMD on a football scholarship. I wanted to play pro football. And I had a really good career as a linebacker up there. We won 2 championships, and I did a pretty good job. I did try out for a couple Canadian teams, but something wrong with all of us that don't make it. But I did play 4 years of minor league ball, and I had a great time with that. But when I was in college, I remember my freshman year, I took a course called Rocks for Jocks, intro to geology, right?
Rocks for
And at the time, I really wasn't, paying attention to class. I was more concerned about football. And then I took an intro to geology class with a professor named Charlie Match, and he was really good. He He made it fun. He explained things in a way that was engaging but made sense. And I loved the logic of it all. And I always had an interest in landforms and mountains and rivers. And, why is this here? Why is that mountain there? Why is that hill there? And geology just fit in my brain. It all made sense. And then I remember at the end of that class, Charlie had a meeting with every person in the class, a one-on-one meeting. And I remember when it was my turn to have a meeting with him, I went into his office and he said, Scott, you have a talent for this geology, but I don't think you could do it.
Oh, challenge.
We had that kind of a relationship, right?
Right.
And of course, I'm laughing to myself and I'm like, oh, really? Well, if I was interested in pursuing a degree in geology, what should I do next? He said, well, I'm teaching a 3,000 level geomorph class next quarter. You might want to think about that. And I went, I'll think about it. As soon as I got out of there, I sprinted down and I signed up and I took that class and I got an A.
Wow.
And then towards the end of that quarter, after class one day, I said, Charlie, I want to have a meeting with you.
Oh, nice.
And he's like, oh, really? I said, I'll meet you in your office. And so we go up there and I said, I'm kind of thinking I might pursue this geology thing, but I'm only going to do it on one condition. He goes, condition? And I said, yep. And he goes, what's that? I said, if you'll be my advisor. And he shook my hand and that was the start.
Nice.
Wow. So, and the other thing that I want to say about Charlie, because he's not with us any longer, but, he knew my dad. He knew my mom and he knew my my situation when my dad died tragically. And I told you guys about the hate blogger and that whole thing.
Yeah.
And Charlie was one of those guys that was pestered about that. And, I was very fortunate to have a mentor like that.
Right.
My coach was a mentor, and I had another mentor who was in my agate hobby. But Charlie was the one that really got me going and helped me find that career path that I'm still pursuing to this day. And I've had more fun than any person can possibly have. And the runestone wouldn't have come into my life if I hadn't studied geology, and I wouldn't be sitting here with you guys, and I wouldn't be calling all of you guys my brothers. So we need to thank Charlie for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It is fascinating, isn't it? Because we met a few months ago. You've known John longer than me, longer than I have. And we were at the High Council conference for the Rosicrucians. And it's just something to say about mentors in your life, whether they're in the fraternity or not, how they have such a positive influence and they see something in you before you can see it within yourself.
100%.
Right?
Yep. And that's exactly what Charlie did. Yeah. And I remember when the runestone came into the lab, one of the things I did was I invited my professors to come down, and a couple of professors from the University of Minnesota campus in the Twin Cities, but they all came down. And we spent a whole day just looking at the runestone. And this is before I really got into it. Right. Because the one thing that became pretty apparent early on was that this was a very well-known artifact. And this was, there was a lot riding on it. And I wanted to get input from the brightest geological minds that I knew. And it was these guys.
That's cool.
And I've got pictures. And I'll never forget that day, but that's really when it started. And I took their input, and I asked Dick Ojakangas, who was a sedimentologist and an expert on metagraywackies, if he would also do a point count on the thin section. I did my own, and we were spot on together. So if I could match my professor, I must have been doing something right.
Right.
So, but this goes back to this whole mentoring point that you were making. I feel so fortunate to have had not just him, but like I said, my coach was a great mentor, and of course my dad until he passed, and George Flame is the other one. So I've been really, really fortunate, and I'm grateful for that.
When after you were doing all your research with it's called the Kensington Rune Stone.
Rune Stone.
Mhm,
Yep.
yeah.
Where did that lead you next?
Okay, well, remember I told you about the pushback, and
Right.
it was nasty,
Mhm.
and it was obnoxious. I
And
said,
I got a feeling that you don't back down from the fight.
no, well, no, I'll back down from a fight if it's if it's not something to fight for. But
Right.
this was something to fight for.
Exactly. Yes.
I wasn't in a position where I could frame people up and put them on the ground, so I had to do it a different way. So the bottom line was, I said to myself, look, I trust rocks. I don't trust some people. Rocks don't have agendas. Rocks don't give a shit. They just are.
hmm
Rock told me it was real. Therefore, all the runes, the dialect, the grammar, the dating, all those features that the scholars said didn't exist in the 14th century must have existed in the 14th century because the rock said so.
Right.
So I then, from 2003 to 2005, I went to Sweden 5 times on my own nickel
hmm
to see if I could find the stuff I knew had to be there. And I found it all.
Wow.
And of course, all that did was piss him off even more. and that's the part that really makes me crazy because look, and these guys, you would think this is in your wheelhouse.
Right.
Okay. I'm just a dopey rockhead. And, but Dick, armed me with enough knowledge to be dangerous. And I found everything primarily on medieval grave slabs that were mortared into the floors of these churches
hmm
on the island of Gotland. In fact, there were 92 of these churches on the island, and I went to every one
Wow.
because I'm an anal retentive lab guy, right?
Right.
But I just didn't want to go, miss that church that would have something amazing, right?
Right.
So anyway, I did that. But what I found out after that was that all 92 of these churches were Cistercian. And I didn't know what the hell a Cistercian was, the white monks that were founded by Robert Molesme in 1095, and then Bernard de Clairvaux joined the order, 1112.
Then they became Templars.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden the Templars came into the picture. And I got, and for a long time I was criticized, the Knights Templar, isn't that cute? And I'm like, no, you dumbass. I mean, I followed the evidence trail. It took me right to them.
hmm
And I was fighting with these people, or they were fighting with me. And I'm like, look, what do you want from me? This is what I do.
And yet at the time you weren't a brother, you weren't a Mason,
No.
you weren't a Templar, none
I
of
didn't
these
know
things.
any of this stuff.
Right. Yeah. You were just following the science where it led you.
Now, for the non-Masons who are watching this as well, a quick explanation of what the Knights Templar are, just so everybody can,
Oh,
Do
yeah.
you want me to do it, or do you want to do it?
No, I would like you to do it. I would like you to do
I'll
it.
just be drinking over here.
Well, the Knights Templar order was, there's, it depends on who you talk to, but if we stick with kind of the accepted narrative is, the Knights Templar were formed in Jerusalem in 1118. First Grand Master was Hugh de Pans. And, they became the fighting force for the Roman Catholic Church. They were also Cistercian, who wore the white tunics with black mantles, which symbolized their dualistic ideology that people don't talk about. But the Templars also wore the white tunics with the black mantles, but they had the red crosses on their chest, and they carried the swords. But they were Cistercian monks as well.
Yep.
And they just served a different function within the order. They were the only ones allowed to eat meat because they needed the protein so they could develop their muscles and so forth. But they also became immensely rich and powerful. And when I say they, everybody talks about the Templars, but the Cistercians did as well, primarily through animal husbandry.
What's that? Just for Mike's gonna have a field day with our little fun fact pop-ups.
Okay.
I mean, he is gonna love that.
Animal husbandry is basically they tended large flocks of sheep.
Okay.
And they would shear the wool for clothing, and they would sell it in their fairs. And of course, the meat they would use for the Templars, and the sheepskin was used for vellum, where they would copy down in the scriptoriums manuscripts over and over and over. They were highly educated, and they were very, their outside the doorways when they would come and go outside and tend the fields, and they had crops. They would grow food. They had foundries. They would make tools. They became immensely wealthy. They would sell their products in the fairs. And of course, the Templars could travel. They had the finest sailing fleet in the world. They were trafficking goods. And I mean, it was an international business that people don't have realize how successful they were. And think about this. Robert Molesme started the order in 1095 when there was one abbey at Citeaux in France.
Okay.
Bernard de Clairvaux joined the order with 30 family members, including 2 of his uncles, who were Hugh de Payens and some of the first Grand Masters. But he joined the order and then founded the first daughter abbey at Clairvaux, hence the name Bernard de Clairvaux, in 1115. And that by the time he died in 1153, not 40 years later, there were 300 Cistercian abbeys all across Europe, into Scandinavia, into the British Isles. And by the time the Templar order was put down in 1307, there were over 750 Cistercian abbeys all across Europe into the Holy Land. So you're talking about the most successful monastic order in history, and nobody knows who they are. But they also were in part comprised of Knights Templar.
Wow.
Did you know that?
No.
Is that amazing?
It's incredible. I don't know why we don't talk about it enough.
Well, we don't talk about it enough
we need
because-
to talk about it because
Yes,
it's
we
an
do.
important
There's a
part
very
of
important
medieval
reason
history.
we don't talk about it is because at one point the church decided that we shouldn't be talking about it anymore, rounded up all the Templars at dawn and tried us for heresy.
I believe that was October 13th.
Yes, Friday the 13th.
Friday
mind
the
you.
13th.
It's the same day I was
1307.
raised as a Mason.
No way.
Yeah, I was
October
raised
13th?
Ooh.
Master Mason. Yeah.
Was it
Nice.
October the 13th?
It was Saturday, but yeah, it was October 13th.
Wow.
Do we want to talk about the number 13?
Of course.
We should.
It's one of my favorite numbers.
Well, it's interesting because the order was written by Bernard de Clairvaux, and the Templars became official at the Council of Troyes in Troyes, France, on January 13 of 1129.
Okay.
And it's not a coincidence that they were put down on that same date. And of course, people go, well, what's the thing with 13? That's bad luck, right? You talked about how the church would demonize anything associated with the Templars and that ideology, their true ideology,
Right.
which is something that the world doesn't really understand. But it goes back to veneration of the ancient goddess. And you know the old phrase, as above, so below,
Oh,
right?
Yeah,
Well,
right.
the physical manifestation of the goddess in the heavens is the planet Venus,
Right.
who they revered. And without going into too much detail, which I'm happy to do, but the bottom line is we see something called the Fibonacci sequence that's associated with the planet Venus, with the moon, and with all life in the universe. And a series of numbers, of which 13 is one of the key numbers. The number 8 is another one. The number 5 is another one, and so on. So we're talking about a number that's associated with life and the life givers, who are women.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And of course, the church wasn't too happy with that, because the church has been and continues to demonize the feminine, and we don't have to go into it. People are well aware of that, and but I think they need to think about context. Why is that happening?
Yeah.
And it boils down to manipulation and control. And it's our job, I feel, not just as Masons, but as human beings, to bring forth the truth, to explain what the history is, what the science is. Look, the Fibonacci sequence isn't a debate. It isn't an opinion. It's a fact.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and women are the life givers. Last I checked, they still are.
Right.
So we need to honor and respect that. And ancient cultures in the past did. Our true tradition did in the past and does to this day. And it's important for people to know this and understand the signs, symbols, and tokens that we as Masons understand.
Right.
But I disagree with some of my brothers that a lot of this information needs to stay within the craft. And I just don't agree with that. I think now more than ever, the world needs to know these secrets. These aren't secrets. This is just truth.
Right.
And so, so there you go.
Yeah.
There's the number 13.
I appreciate that. Something that's has always been an interesting topic. When the Templars were rounded up and Jacques de Molay, was put to death, and they tortured him and did all this stuff, and that's where we kind of got that stuff, the Baphomet and everything.
Right.
When everybody went underground and the ships were gone, it's interesting when I look out of all the countries in the world, Switzerland has an inverse cross and with the colors from what the Knights Templars did use, correct?
White and black.
Yeah. Oh, it was white and black? Okay, I thought it was red and white, and then the Switzerland's flag.
No, you're right. I'm talking about the black and white, the dualism. That's my mistake.
Yeah.
Yep.
And when you look at the Swiss flag, the colors are inverted from what the Knights Templar used, and that typically meant in old times a sign of distress. And we also know that the Knights Templar, Switzerland has also been well known for their banking system.
Right.
So is it a Templar stronghold, do you believe? Or is it just a coincidence? Where it started, where you think it.
Well, I will preface this by saying that is not an area that I've dove the deepest.
Sure.
I know enough to be dangerous, and I know that banking system is something that goes back to the Templars, but they weren't the ones that invented it either. I mean, some of these practices go back to the Arabs
that
they were interacting with back in the Holy Land when they weren't fighting each other, right? It's kind of that tradition that I think we've all heard stories about during the Civil War, World War I, World War II. You're in a foxhole and your enemy's there, and he gives you a certain sign, that he's a brother. You are obligated to provide aid and assistance to him.
Right.
And so many people that probably would have been killed because they were Masons and another brother came upon them, they provided aid and assistance. Santa Anna, the Mexican general that defeated, all the Americans at the Alamo,
right.
That's how he was saved. His life was saved about a month and a half later. And he put on his Masonic apron, he gave the sign of distress, and his life was spared. But that tradition goes all the way back to the Templars and the Arabs back at the time of the Crusades.
Wow.
Yeah. I have a theory, too, that I've been playing with about secretism, and it's a term that basically where you mingle all the ideas from, different disparate religions or, practices and things like that. And at the time, the Templars were global. We talked about that. They were global. Yep. They were all over. And the craft at the time probably was global as well. So we had the traditions from different disparate civilizations. So you had Arabs and things at the time that were congruent to Templarism. So they probably met. They probably shared the traditions, and a lot of the traditions came with the Templars. And vice versa, right? And some of those went across the board. And I think the Templarism probably brought along with them a lot of the Eastern traditions, and incorporated into their traditions, and eventually, became part of the tradition as we know it today.
Well,
absolutely.
And also the allegory of the first Rosicrucian Manifesto kind of alludes to that as well. Yes, it dealt with these German monks who believed that science and religion was corrupt, and we had to get back. We had to create a new Reformation, and we had this man named Christian Rosenkreuz who was grown up in a monastery, who traveled with his mentor over to Arabia and learned, the Arabian taught. I mean, it's kind of like hinted at, I think, from the Fama Fraternitatis, which is the first Rosicrucian Manifesto.
Right.
Well, and not just that. One of the things
that was 1616, I believe, when that manifesto came out.
Right. Well, and that's relatively recent when it comes to Templar history. But the other thing that I think, we talk about in the new book is the interaction between Templars, medieval Templars, or, circa 1400 era Templars with the indigenous people who practice Freemasonry just like we do.
In America.
Really? In America.
Right.
Oh, yeah. They call it the Medewin.
Yeah.
And I participated in their sweats, and I've talked to them about it. I've talked to them about the Templars. They know all about the Templars that were coming over here. Absolutely.
They have a 3-degree system similar to ours.
Yeah, they do. And actually, I compared the rituals of modern Freemasonry. This was before I was a Mason, by the way.
This is amazing, right? That's amazing. That you did
Really?
this.
In
Yeah.
Akhenaten to the founding fathers, and I compared the rituals of the Mediwin with Freemasonry. Before I was a Mason.
Before you were even a Mason, yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that's cool is when they are raised, they have, it's very similar, but what's different is they have what's called a magis shell, and they put it in their mouth. It's like the life force. And when they are allegorically killed, that shell comes out.
Wow.
But then when they are raised, it goes back in, and they are raised and they are reborn.
Wow.
The life is brought back into them. And it's crazy. I mean, and their lodges are laid out with the same dimensions. They have a Tyler, the equivalent of a Tyler,
Right.
who watches in a little bear den. Their processions follow the track of the sun, just like ours. And actually, ours follows the same as theirs.
Wow.
They've been practicing Freemasonry for tens of thousands of years.
Do you believe
and they still do.
Is it a synchronicity with human beings that we all just have these certain rituals and
A collective
stuff that
consciousness.
are just collective consciousness?
I would
yeah.
absolutely say yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I know that's true. I mean, in my heart, I know that's true.
Yeah.
And so, this whole idea of Freemasonry being invented in 1717. I mean, we all know that's
Yes,
ridiculous,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Of
I
course,
mean,
that's not true.
That's where
Right.
the official, that's when the official grand
That's
body.
when the 4 lodges in England combined it. But it's been
Forever.
These rituals have been around forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is it with human nature and rituals? Is it a sense of connection with everything?
Yeah, I mean everything. I think it's a connection with nature. It's a connection with the cosmos. It's a connection with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the things that we get into, it just, I don't know a better way to say it than it just feels right.
Yeah.
Right.
When you go through it. And I think it's a natural thing. And this whole collective consciousness that we talk about at times. And people say, well, what are you talking about? And it was a good example that I can think of is when you're at a concert.
Yeah.
And everybody paid to be there because you love the music.
Yeah.
And when the band is on and everybody's into it and they're all just, rocking to the same, that's collective consciousness. And it feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you have a good conversation with brothers, with friends, with family, with, your loved one or your partner, and it's just working.
Mm-hmm.
That's that connection, that consciousness.
Right.
And sometimes, you don't have to say a word. Just look at the person and you know what they want. Usually I look at my wife and she goes, oh, he's hungry.
That's it.
Speaking of which, you've been in this, you've been a part of so much, all these different cultures, runes, everything. What does she think about all this? You told us off air that you guys met when she was 18. You were 21. And what does she think about this? Where you guys have journeyed together?
Well, I guess I think it would probably be appropriate for her to speak for herself. But if you ask me what I think she would say is it's been incredible. And not, it's a rare thing because, I know we have lots of friends that are married and a lot of them get along great with their spouses in their common interests, but most of them don't have a common interest that they're really both into. Usually one person is into something and the other one tolerates it or supports it, but they really don't. They're really not into it.
Right.
That's not how it's been with Janet. First of all, she's smarter than probably all of us in the room, and she understands the concepts that we've talked about, and she provides insight. And I know she loves it. I know she gets it. She understands the significance of all of this. We like to have fun and talk about these things that we've done, the Rune Stone and everything else that's sort of come. But the other thing that she realizes that I realize, we both realize, is that as much fun as this is, and it is fun,
Mm-hmm.
it's important work.
Right.
And, we've been through a lot, and I just feel like we have to keep going, and we have kept going, and things have just kept getting more and more interesting and more profound and more important. And now we have we just recently found a scroll called the Yeshua Scroll.
Hmm.
And I can't talk about the message yet,
Sure.
but it doesn't get any more important. And profound. And she gets it. She gets it all. And she's written her own book with one of the most brilliant people I've ever met in my life. One of the nicest persons I've ever met, Alan Butler. So to say that she gets it would be an understatement. She's living it. She's appreciates it. She's been out in the field with me, with Alan, and read her book.
Hey,
and that'll answer your question.
I'm reading a book. I'm updating my dating profile to find a girl common interests. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's rare to find somebody that,
gets it.
It's beyond gets it and is doing her own thing at the same time. And we bounce things off each other, and I get honest feedback. If she thinks I'm full of shit, she'll tell me. I've heard it more than once.
Yeah. It's good.
Scott, one thing I'm excited, I would love to talk about that when you're ready, about the scroll you found.
Yeah.
I do want to jump back to where you were saying when you visited those 94 churches. 92 churches. And where did that take you then?
Well, at that point, it took me to the Templars, the Cistercians and the Templars. And then I just started to do a deep dive. I bought all kinds of books, and I became an expert on the Cistercians. And probably the most important thing, besides the fact that they were so brilliant, and I studied their architecture, and not just the Cistercian monasteries, but the Gothic cathedrals that were financed by the Knights Templar and their money. And they're using an ancient architecture called Gothic architecture. And that is a fascinating study on its own. And really what it was teaching me at the time was what their true ideology was. I mean, if you read about the Cistercians, you talk to anybody that has any knowledge about, history and the church, they'll say that the Cistercians were Catholic, and their true ideology was anything but that. In fact, they had a fascination with the Virgin Mary, but she was just a metaphor for the ancient goddess. And so really, after I found them, if you will, I started to study who they really were, and the Templars, and what their true ideology was. Because the other thing that I had in my mind from the beginning, after I knew that the runestone was real, that begged three questions that I was trying to answer. Somebody carved it.
Mm-hmm.
They came from some place, and they came here for some reason. So the who was answered pretty quickly. Where they came from was answered pretty quickly. The why took time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the answer to that too. And that's a big part of what this new book is about.
Yeah.
And it was the sanctuary that they were trying to establish. They called it in the journals a free Templar state.
Mm-hmm.
The New Jerusalem. Brother Francis Bacon called it the New Atlantis, a place where they could live free from the tyranny of the monarchs of Europe, free from the persecution of the Roman Catholic Church. And I just talked about this on another podcast, but the idea that these two entities would come together to legitimize each other, to elevate them above the people, And so it was, and they persecuted. I mean, who suffered that persecution more than anybody? The Knights Templar, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so they went underground and they disappeared into history when those ships disappeared from the western port in France at La Rochelle. And, what happened to them? Well, we know what happened now. We know exactly what happened. And really, this story of the Templars is where you should begin when you're talking about the story of the founding of the United States of America. And next year is going to be our 250th anniversary. And one of the things I want to make sure happens is that when we're all patting ourselves on the back as Americans and as Freemasons,
Yeah.
and frankly, I think we as Freemasons deserve to pat ourselves on the back more than we even realize,
We do.
because all of these tenets really go back to our ideological and in some cases biological ancestors, the Knights Templar. And it was in Parsival, I believe, that was written in the 1200s, where the idea was first put forth that every human being, regardless of race, color, creed, sex, religion, is born with certain inalienable rights. Everyone is.
Right.
Everyone. And so these ideas were put forth by a knight, a Templar knight. But it's a much older tenet.
Mhm.
And so it's come forward, and our founding fathers, of course, who are the descendants of those Templars that were persecuted, inculcated that into our Constitution, our Bill of Rights. And those are the things I think that we need to talk about next year and remind people where they came from. And the only people that are going to tell that story is us
Yeah.
Right.
as Freemasons.
Right.
Well, as we already know, modern Freemasonry, about a little over 300 years, right? And the fraternity, society, adapts slow. And it's podcasts like all these Masonic podcasts that are coming up, esoteric podcasts that are really trying to bring this to light, because there is people looking for this kind of knowledge, camaraderie,
Yep.
tradition,
Mhm.
ritual that takes us back to our ancestors. And that's why I, like with my podcast, what John champions over at UFOs on the Level, we're just there showing that light.
Yeah.
And it's the great works that inspire when I was younger watching your show, right? And other shows, and watching these podcasts from Joe Rogan when he had all these different guests on.
Right.
It's truly remarkable. I feel like we're at the stage of an awakening.
I couldn't have said it better myself. We were talking about this before we started.
Yeah.
I didn't find out my dad was a Mason until after he died.
Yeah.
When they gave me his ring, they cut his ring off, they gave it to me. And then when I went home, I said, Mom, what's this? And Dad always wore it. And she said, well, your dad was a Shriner. And I said, what's a Shriner? She goes, oh, he was a Freemason. Like I knew what that was.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. And, frankly, there have been times when I get pissed because I'm like, Dad, what the hell?
Mhm.
But it was that post-World War II generation
Yeah.
of Freemasons that were very secretive about the craft and, the idea, and it's still around today that, to become a Mason, I hear young people say, well, how do I get invited? You don't have to be invited.
Well, that's the thing. So
Yeah.
me and Mike's been on this journey together now for almost 3 years, and Masonry's done a lot of amazing things that we just talked about. But
Yes.
the one thing we haven't done, and we have done really bad, and I announced this at the High Council meeting when I gave my presentation, we've done a really bad job in articulating what it means to be a Freemason
Yeah.
and how to be a Freemason, because
Right.
you don't need to solicit a membership.
No.
You just need to be able to articulate it. And I think there were men who enjoyed what they had in the World War II generation, but there was a lot of men who didn't know what to say because nobody taught them.
Right.
We go back to the mentorship in the
Right.
beginning.
Yeah.
We go back to how if you take on a new member of the lodge, a candidate, an entered apprentice, you should be able to not just have them regurgitate some exam for proficiency. You need to be able to even challenge them at times so they can articulate it to other people.
Right.
Because there are people, we are all examples. We are all a light, and there are men in the darkness looking for the path for our fraternity. And we can do that if we learn how to articulate it, which is something that All Square is really one of many podcasts have really been trying to do.
Well, you know, that's you've done amazing work. And just in my podcast alone, I think that I can count 3 or 4 men now that have become brothers, because just from reaching out to me saying, hey, I like what you do. I like masonry. I don't know anything about it. What do I do? How do I do this?
Right.
And where do I go to my lodge? Where do I, how do I do this? And all different states all over the U.S. Just, okay, let me help you, and go. And then these brothers come back to me and they're like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing I've ever found. And I wouldn't know how to have done that until I found your podcast and I reached out, and it was like, it shouldn't be that hard, right?
No, it shouldn't be that hard.
It shouldn't be that hard, right?
Sorry, Scott.
Yeah.
But you're right, because Mike gets inquiries all the time,
Mike is a saint.
and we are trying to push them to where they need to talk to.
Yeah.
It's kind of tough internationally, but I've tried to figure out ways to help them. But because if we can't do that, then we could be letting another bright light, another future example of the fraternity.
There are I can tell you there are probably millions of really bright young men that are out there that are looking. I mean, this is their home. This would be their home if they knew how to find it. And one of the things I would ask you guys to do on both of your shows is at some point before you're done, or maybe in the beginning, just say, hey, and for those of you that might be interested in the craft, go to your state's website, and there'll be a tab that says be a Mason, fill out a petition, whatever. You don't need to be invited.
Yep.
All you have to do is ask.
There you go.
And the other thing that I do whenever I give a presentation is I make sure whoever is hosting me, if it's a lodge or whatever, hey guys, I want it to be open to the public. Because there's nothing here that I'm going to tell. Right. I'm not going to talk about passwords. I'm not going to teach anybody handshakes or any of that stuff. But look, if they want to know that stuff, it's on the internet, for God's sakes. But we just don't do that, because if we can't keep that stuff secret, what can we keep secret, right? How can you be trusted with something else? But I always make it open to the public, because you never know, there might be some great brothers out there, or potential brothers that just need to come in. They get excited hearing about it, and they come up to me afterwards. What do I need to do? And we might, if we get one guy that comes to a lecture that otherwise is closed, right? We have a tiled present. No, open it up. I want people, and this isn't just for us; it's for everybody.
It's for everybody. There's a good segue here, because we talked about this before the podcast. Was you waited a really long time before you became a Mason. You understood, you studied the craft for years, 10 years or more.
10 years.
And from the outside, and due to the show, and you didn't want any type of stigma by, being favorable to the Masons, whatever, you kind of stepped back.
Well, I wanted to be, because I'm an independent,
of course,
forensic geologist, and I can't be an advocate for anybody. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. So looking back, those 10 years, the ideas that you had prior to becoming a Mason, how does that compare in your mindset for people that are thinking about becoming a Mason or not? I mean, you had all these ideas, you did the research, you did the work, but then you became a Freemason. How did that change for you?
Well, I was convinced by the evidence, if you will. And because I was, like I said, I was studying the Templars, the Cistercians, what their motivations were, and Freemasonry was just woven, within it. And that's one of the things that kind of told me that Freemasonry and Templarism, one is an outgrowth of the other. And I know that's true now.
Because of some information in here.
Well, yeah, when you read that, if you don't realize that that's exactly what happened, it's self-evident in there. But it's even broader than that. We talked about it a little bit with the Indigenous people and other traditions around the world that are basically practicing the same thing.
Right.
So, but when I started studying it, I found it to be so moving, so enriching and enlightening. I mean, we use that word a lot, but it's true.
It is true.
Light's just another word for knowledge. And I learned so much that, just forced me to think inward about things. And then eventually, the runestone came back and paid more dividends when I became a Templar.
Mm-hmm.
And the white hat gave the lecture and said, and the other 8 arches were built by 22 men from Gebel. And I went, 8 and 22? Those are the first 2 numbers in the Kensington Rune Stone. And then I went over to my Masonic mentor, John Freeberg, who I just saw the other night at Scottish Rite. And I said, John, is there a ritual book for this degree? And it was the Select Master degree of the Cryptic Council. He said yes. And I said, give me that. And I started reading, and oh my God, I then realized, and I think I'm the first person ever to realize this. And I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying because it's startling. It's shocking. But the runestone is comprised of symbolism, allegory, code, and some, straightforward, legit information.
Right.
The difficult part is what's symbolism, what's allegory, and what's legit. But what that also tells me is that the monk that carved that inscription was deeply initiated in, the Enochian mysteries and the legend of Enoch. And this was not some farmer trying to scrap a living in 1898. I mean,
trying to sell a rock.
Look, it was ridiculous beforehand, right?
Yeah.
The rock spoke, and it that was really all that needed to be said. But now it's elevated to a whole nother level, and it just made me. If I had not become a Freemason, I would not have made that discovery.
Right.
And that discovery, to me. And I think within the brotherhood, the brothers that hear me give that lecture go, yep, that's us. That's the tradition we come from. And that's 1362. And last I checked, that's a few hundred years before 1717.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I'll be in a lodge and I'll hear a lecture maybe 100 times, or I'll watch some of the cadences that go on in the lodge, and then it just dawns on me something new, and it just takes me down this rabbit hole that I'm like, how come we're not talking about this? You know what I mean? And it's quite remarkable that how Masonry is this repository for a lot of sacred knowledge that our ancestors put in here to protect.
But, you bring up a really good point that it just dawned on me. I already knew this point, and I know you guys know it, but there is, look, the well of learning and of symbolism and allegories and all this stuff is so vast. It's so deep. We couldn't even begin to teach it if that was what we set out to do in Masonry. And what I love about it is, like you said, maybe you'll hear a lecture, or you'll read something and you've read it 50 times, or you're opening a lodge and we do something and you go, well, why do we do that? Right. And then you start to dig, and all of a sudden this well opens up and
you spend your 6 months of your life doing it.
There's another 6 months of my life, right?
Yeah, right.
But that's the cool thing about Masonry, is that, it's endless, but you will find the right paths that you want to pursue, and they'll come to you, and that becomes your journey, right? And what's fun about that is once you go down that well and you've learned all this stuff, I don't know about you, when I learn something new and I think it's cool, I want to tell people.
Yeah,
Same.
You're right.
Right?
Same.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so you'll sit there with a brother, hey, check this out. And then he might be, hey, check this out, right? And what happens? You both learn.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the cool things about the craft. It's sort of, it's sitting there, but it's not something that's forced upon you. It's not pushed upon you. You pick up the pieces you want and run as far as you want.
It's truly a lifelong journey. And the cool thing is Masonry doesn't say it's an old white man's club.
Yeah.
Everybody comes from, you have people of all different faiths, You also have military veterans. You have nerds. You have jocks. You have
Prince Hall.
You have everybody, and everybody brings a different lens to what they love. And it's like, oh, I'm decoding it this way. Oh, I'm understanding this symbolism this way, and talking and having that communication and being able to articulate it.
And it's all, there is no wrong answers, right? Whatever it means to you is what it means.
Right.
And it's not right or wrong. It may resonate more with some people than others, but that's the beautiful thing. Symbols mean different things to different people. And in many cases, it's just endless.
Yeah.
You know?
But I think the cool part is that it ties into history, and to the point where our symbols and our practices pretty much haven't changed over millennia.
Yeah.
Where you could say, and that the people that were practicing the same and doing the same things we are now were doing it thousands of years ago. And we're actually making documents and carving things and incorporating the symbols that they knew at the time,
right,
and that meant something to them, for us to even now, thousands of years later, to look back and say, oh, I recognize that.
Yeah.
I recognize these symbols, and whether the meaning has changed or whether at the time it still resonates with us to understand that. Right.
Well, so many of these old documents, right, are not on an audible. People learn different. People listen and will pick up something, and it would be really nice by the time in my twilight years to actually see these documents on Audible, so you can listen, and who knows what people are going to uncover. Think about it. You're writing something right now. You've been on TV shows, you've wrote books. People are going to be looking at that, asking the same questions and bringing different perspectives. Have you ever sat back and thought about that?
Oh, yeah.
So the fun thing we said Audible is I was sitting on a plane when I was reading your book last week. I'm flying to Houston, and the guy next to me says, hey, I don't want to bother you, but can I take a picture of the front of your book? I'm like, of course. And he's like, well, what is of this book? Right. And I said, of course, this is my brother's guy. He's like, he's your brother? And I explained to him that we're Masons, we're brothers. And he's like, oh, that's cool. I really didn't understand. It was a younger guy, IT guy. He was, flying out to Houston for work. And so was I, kind of camaraderie there. And then he was fascinated by it. Right. So I'm like, here's the book. And I just kind of explained it to him. And he's like, I do a lot of IT work. So I'm listening a lot. And he's like, I listen to books a lot because I'm doing things, and I'll do a book a day or two. And books.
I know this is going to be on audiobook too.
Okay, because that's what the question is.
That's where he was going,
because he was like, is it? I'm like, I don't know. And I go, I'll tell Scott.
It is because my publisher said something just the other day when I was picking up more books, because it's selling really good right now.
Yeah.
But she said there is going to be an audio book.
I was going to joke around. I said I would do it for free for you if you just gave me whiskey every time I saw you. I would just read the book.
No problem.
Well, John,
no problem.
Well, John, like you said, you just finished the book, and this book's been sitting here, so let's get into it.
And you know what? Yes. You tantalize me with something, and I want to hear it. And I'll just preface this by saying, obviously, if someone wants to call bullshit on something that that's fine.
Yeah.
And I love when people say, oh, I loved it. It was great. You did a great. I mean, everybody loves to hear positive, feedback, right? But I don't learn anything from people that, blow sunshine. And I love the sunshine. Don't get me wrong. But, I learned from people that say, well, you know what? I had a problem with this, or I have a question about that. Yeah. So fire away, brother.
Well, so I dug into it, right? I read parts of it multiple times because I had some time and I was sitting on a plane, and, just because when I got into it, it was really interesting. I was fascinated about it. And the story is great. The journals are great. The corroborating evidence between disparate sources is interesting because you want to look at that from a perspective that's, I would say, a scientific perspective, to say, okay, somebody could probably craft this and make it believable to a point where, you beyond a reasonable doubt, you couldn't say that it was bullshit or not, right? You could say that somebody had the depth and the knowledge and the time to spin this yarn and sell it to or try to sell it as a real artifact, right? But some of the things that, unless you had knowledge of the craft, knowledge of numerology, and almost an endless list of things that would comprise,
and some deeply esoteric stuff,
very, very
that
deep,
even most Masons don't know.
Exactly. That wouldn't make sense, right? It wouldn't make sense. The other part of it is the mystery of the person who brought the documents, Diana, right? Is that her name?
Well, there's no mystery about her.
Well,
she is a pathological liar, and she's a thief, and admitted.
Right.
thief. And she didn't admit that for many years. But when she did, it all made sense and started, to look. She came to me in July of 2016.
Hmm.
It's going to be 2026 here in a few days.
Right.
So it's almost 10 years that I've been vetting these journals.
Mhm.
And the biggest problem I've had, frankly, is her.
Yeah.
Because she is educated.
Mhm.
She's a genealogist.
Mhm.
She's
Does she work with the Mormons at some point? Is she
she
Mormon?
was Mormon.
She was
Yeah,
Mormon?
she
Okay.
was Mormon, and had some run-ins with other people in her faith,
Mhm.
and she's also had some run-ins with the law.
Mhm.
So she's the biggest issue that I have. But
Mhm.
And just for context,
yeah,
for the people who don't know but will be getting your book, let me put in that link out there too.
Sorry.
Who is this again? Who is this?
this woman her name is Diana Muir,
Okay.
and I'll just give you just a brief synopsis
Yeah.
of her story.
Appreciate
And
it.
I'm sorry. We just launched into it.
No,
No,
it's
no,
fine.
no,
It's fine.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
But she said that she was doing research into her own genealogy,
Right.
and it looks like she's connected to the last guy to write in the journals, John Weems Jr. We call him Jr. because his dad was John also, and
Mhm.
we call him Senior. And she went to a small town in Tennessee called Greenville, Tennessee, and they had a very small historical society, genealogical society building that was basically a house that was, converted into, a facility for research. And she went there and asked about John Weems Jr. Now, you guys need to know I've retraced every one of her steps.
Right.
I've been to every place that she said. I've certainly been there. I've been down in the basement. And what happened was there was a young guy working there that day, and he said, well, yeah, I think we got something in the basement. And they went down, and there was an old chest that had been rescued from the local church that burned down in 1880. And the chest was partially burned. But anyway, they got it out, and inside was a leather saddlebag, and in the saddlebag were these little books and what she called a burrito, which was the lambskin map that was rolled up and tied up. And she started to look at these things, but it was late in the day, and she had driven over from Georgia for the long weekend. She said it was Mother's Day weekend, and she needed to get back. So the guy said, well, we got to close up here. And, so I'll close up. And then I got to put everything away. So when he went downstairs, she put the saddlebag in her bag and walked out.
Wow.
So she swiped them.
Yeah, she took them. And
Wiped them.
you read it.
Yeah.
She
admitted to it, right? Yeah.
She admitted to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why she probably did throw them away. Because well, first of all, let me continue the story and then we'll talk about what it means. So then she drove back home and she said, I pretty much forgot about him. I put him in the closet and I forgot about him until I watched an episode of your show.
Yeah.
And I mentioned, this was one we did with Steve St. Clair.
Mhm.
We talked about Earl Henry Sinclair and the legend of him coming over to North America.
Yeah.
And she said, I remembered the name Henricus Santa Claro in the journals. And then she said, then I sat down and I started to decipher them. And she used, Google Translate and Bing Translate. And she said, once I got into it, I couldn't stop. It was such a fascinating story. And she translated it all.
Mhm.
She originally contacted me in an email and basically said, Scott, I have the journals of Earl Henry Sinclair. And I'm like, sure you do. Click, delete. The next day she sent me another email and wrote essentially, no, really, I've got the journals of Earl Henry Sinclair. Sure you do.
Yeah,
Boom. And then about a week later, she said, no, I'm not kidding. And she had a couple pictures. Hi, Scott Wolter here. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's how it happened. But what I found out after that is that she had contacted the Curse of Oak Island show.
The Oak Island guys, yeah.
And they were sort of lukewarm on her, but they said, yeah, well, if you want to come up and see us, we'll take a look at it.
Mhm.
So she drove up to Nova Scotia, but when she got to the border, because she had had a previous felony and hadn't signed her passport, and I'm not sure if that's true or not, they wouldn't let her across. So she couldn't get to Oak Island. So what happened is she ended up calling somebody that she knew who was affiliated with the show that lived in the town where she was, I forget, Kingstown or something like that. And Jeffrey Irving, and he came across the border to meet with her. And he took pictures of everything and he looked at it. And so I talked to him in the beginning because, you know, after he or she met with him, then she went to Westford to look at the Westford Knight, the Westford Boat Stone.
Mhm.
She signed in and I found her signature.
You found her signature
so
on the
that was
thing?
true.
Yeah.
And then she, you know, then we made plans to get together. I went down to Nauvoo and I looked at what she had brought and it was amazing. And
So like when you had it in your hands, it was legit.
it sure looked legit to me.
Yeah.
Now, remember, we talked about the Cistercians and their practice of copying documents.
Yeah, of course.
Is what I think the lambskin map was probably original. That linen paper journal, was that John Weems's handwriting? I don't know.
Mhm.
Subsequent to that meeting, I found out that there were copies were made.
Of course.
And so that may have been a copy of his writing.
Mhm.
So we just don't know.
Right.
Right. And we haven't done any testing because she threw them away.
Which is
However,
bizarre.
I do have 3 pages.
Which is even more bizarre.
Well, no, it's
plausible.
It's infuriating on one hand.
Yes.
But on the other hand, when you know her history, obviously, if that institution understood what they had, we'd know the story already.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
They obviously didn't know what they had. And it's understandable from the standpoint that 10 of the first 13 journals are written in Latin.
Mm-hmm.
Who reads Latin nowadays?
Nobody.
Right.
And the next 2 journals were written in Old English.
Right.
That's even worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can see why somebody probably, they were never really looked at carefully. And who knows what the history was. But in any case, it made sense to me that she, I hate to say this, probably did throw them away, because if they were found, then you could prove a crime. And she'd probably go to jail for the rest of her life. She's in her 70s. So
wow.
Even a short sentence would be pretty much the end for her.
Right. Right. And she kept the 3 pages because they had signatures on them.
Yeah. And she saved them, and then, but she gave them to us. And so we have them.
Right. So that they could potentially be carbon dated. They could be forensically analyzed.
And you know, and I haven't gone to that step yet, because on one hand, I thought maybe someday we might get a show, we could do it on a show.
Yeah.
And have it be a reveal, right?
Of course, yeah.
But the other thing is, let's say they came back and they were not as old as we thought. The dates on there, because they've been recopied, that wouldn't be a surprise at all.
Right.
So, but when you read the book and you read the analysis at the end, it's the internal evidence that really, for me, was the strongest evidence.
And that's what kept me going as well, because knowing her, if you take her out of the whole equation and you just look at the information as it sounds with, the knowledge of the craft and everything else, it's very compelling and an amazing story.
Yeah.
She taints the thing in my mind. I'm just saying it out loud, because she's a crook and all these other things. But that doesn't mean that the information isn't true. That doesn't mean that the story isn't true. It just adds a wrinkle in the whole thing.
Well, yeah, and that's why that's the first chapter.
Of course.
Because
yes, because you were like, and you do that right in the beginning. You're like, look.
I'm not going to sit there and try to, oh, by the way, at the end, I got this problem.
No.
We take it head on, and then, look, if you want to stop here, stop. But, and again, like you said, there's so many things that are in the documents, the sacred numbers, the Fibonacci. I mean, somebody could know that. But they're probably, and a Mason just wouldn't do that.
No.
Even if it was a brother, I don't see a brother trying to pass this off as something that's
legitimate. Yeah.
That's not real. I just don't see it.
Right.
And I'm not saying that we're perfect, but I will say that there's a higher probability of a Freemason being more ethical than just the general public. That's my opinion.
No, that's
it's
my
biased,
opinion as well.
but it's probably true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you did a really good job with that and putting it all together, especially with the background of her and you vetting her and you basically calling her out the whole entire time.
Well, and I asked her to write something up.
She did.
And then later I interviewed her.
Yeah.
And I did that for two reasons, as I said in the book.
Yeah.
One was, you ask somebody to tell a story, two different times, you're going to get a different version of the same story. And you might get some, I thought maybe she might add some more things that she hadn't told me the first time that would be important and helpful.
Right.
And the other reason is I wanted to see if she told the same story.
Jeez,
Yeah.
If she was lying.
Yeah.
You have to play detective, forensic geologist. I mean, literally,
Yeah.
wear many hats in this.
And make no mistake, you can say what you want about Diana, but she's not a stupid person.
Mm-hmm.
She's very intelligent, but she's been very forthcoming about her troubled past.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten very upset with her. Janet can tell you there have been times I lit her up. I say, "What the are you doing, Diana? Jesus, you're your own worst enemy."
Yeah.
But you know what? To her credit, I kind of lose my shit sometimes, but she keeps her cool and she's very honest about when she's made mistakes. She says, "Yeah, I shouldn't have done that," or this is, and part of her situation was beyond her control when she was younger, but still, just.
And part of it's genetic. I mean, obviously she's related to this. She probably has some sense of onus or something on it because she's part of the family.
Yeah.
She actually is a descendant of the people that she's done the research on,
Yeah, your blood is your blood.
Right.
You are who you are, and your ancestors, your parents are your parents, your grandparents, and so on. You can't do anything about that. And maybe that's part of the reason why she is an intelligent person, and she did a good job with the translations. And then, my God, we got the Sister Harkin copy,
which is amazing. I wanted to ask you about the Sister Harkin copy. Like how did that come into I understand reading from the book, but from people that would read the book, you go buy the book, by the way, you need to read it and get the whole thing. But when you get to the Sister Harkin, at some point during my reading, I was doing both translations from Diana and Sister Harkin. And at one point I was just like, I'm going to go with Sister Harkin just because it felt better to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it was about my own bias about how I felt about her translation, but it felt more.
There were things in her translation. I'll give you an example of one thing that was actually a bigger deal than maybe people think.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Henry the Builder.
Mm-hmm.
This is the third generation of Sinclairs. And he comes over when he's 24, I think, and he meets the knights that were brought over that are still guarding the treasures. They've married with Indigenous women. They have kids of their own, grandkids, and they tell him stories about his grandfather
that he didn't know,
that he never met because he died 4 years before he was born. And the world didn't know that. We did not know that Earl Henry died in 1404.
Yeah.
But William would go on to build Roslyn Chapel. And when he comes back, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, after meeting with these men and understanding the mission of the covenant and the indigenous people, the whole thing, he says, I resolved to build a chapel. Whereas in Diana's translations, I resolved to build an edifice in stone. And we assume that that's Roslyn. But he says, but
Chapel.
Sister Harkin's translation is a chapel. Now, you may say to yourself, what the hell's the difference? Well, the difference is the current narrative, historical narrative about Roslyn Chapel is that it was supposed to eventually be a cathedral, a much larger structure.
Right.
And this was only one part of it. But it sounds like that was its intention all along.
Right. And
so, I mean, you can take that for what it's worth, but I do think that's important. That's a question that has now been answered. And and I tend to agree with you. I really like Sister Harkin's translations. And as I mentioned in the book, you're talking about one set of translations that happened from somebody using modern the internet, right?
Mhm.
Google translation programs, and you're talking about somebody else in 1885 who was formally trained in Latin um, by the church,
Right.
educated within the church. So I kind of lean towards her too.
Yeah, I did just because it felt closer to
Yeah,
what the actual text was,
right.
or the truth, I guess.
But the thing about it was, I remember when we got that copy, I said to myself, well, okay, if Diana has her translation that was done with the internet translation programs, and we have a person who did it that was actually trained in Latin, they better not be identical. I mean,
Right.
I didn't know that, but I
Right.
just in my mind and in my heart, I go, they can't be the same.
They can't, right.
I mean, it's going to be the same story, but it
It can't be
better not
word for
be
word
word for word.
Yeah. Yeah, because then
And
we just
it wasn't.
yeah,
It
yeah.
really wasn't even close.
Mm-mm. No, but the context, I think, fit better to the story.
I agree.
The story, because, I mean, you could read it in one way, and but the context from the Latin seemed to make more sense.
The only thing we didn't get from her was she had mentioned that she was going to do the Old English, but in the copy we have, we didn't have that.
Right.
Now we know that is a copy of
Right.
what she did, and maybe the person that copied it, they said the girlfriend of, his dad or whatever. Maybe she just missed the Old English,
Sure.
but I was kind of looking for that too. But
Doesn't mean it can't be out there somewhere.
well, might be. Well, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But you know what? I think we have to look at the cup being half full and not worry
Yeah.
about.
Even the cup at
What
half
we
full is
missed.
an amazing story. I mean, and I don't take offense in this when I say that, but even if this is complete 100% bullshit, it's an amazing story.
It is no.
No,
It's
seriously.
an amazing
Yeah.
story, and you know how I worded my conclusion.
Yeah.
I said it's more likely real than not,
Right.
and but I feel really strongly and confident in the analysis. And I really do think this is what happened. And the reason is, and you don't know this yet,
Oh, yeah.
I'm just finishing the next book on Cremona Document material.
Which is amazing.
And that stuff, we don't have a Diana problem.
Right.
We have a Bill Jackson problem because Bill's dead, but I feel like I know him, and I feel like I know Dan Spartan, and I certainly know Don, who we're going to see day after tomorrow.
Nice.
So was this what part of the presentation you gave at High Council?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about the Cremona Document material. I talked about Don. You remember I showed that picture of he and I, and Janet was actually there.
Wow.
But I took a selfie of Don and I, and asked him, is there anyone left? And then he poo-pooed McMaster's, and McMaster's turned out to have the map to the scroll.
So just a little teaser for this book coming out so people can prepare. You might want to tell people a little bit about what it is or what you can.
Well, no, I'm happy. I talk quite a bit about the Cremona Document. Actually, Don and I changed the name. It's actually been called different things over time, and even in modern history, when Bill Jackson got the document, they called it the De Leon file for a while, and that was based on the Templar knight that married Altamara, Leon, Ponce de Leon. Not that Ponce de Leon. It must have been an ancestor, but in any case, it was a document that a guy by the name of Bill Jackson, who was our friend Don Rue's best friend, they grew up in New York City together, and eventually Bill Jackson served in the Korean War, and when he got out, he joined the agency in 1962 that Don had joined when Dan Spartan started the company in 1961. And then in 1968, and basically what they did at this company, they were private enterprise. I'm supposed to say private security company. That's right.
Yeah, private security.
And they were hired by our military to do certain things that help keep us safe. And I can tell you that they've killed people. Some of their colleagues were killed. A lot of it was very dangerous work. And in my mind, these guys are heroes, really, because I think I told you guys during COVID, Don sent me an envelope that had 100 pages with top secret on the top of the pages. And I called Don. I said, what the hell is this? And he said in his voice, he said, you read the material, you don't make copies, you send it back, you get the next batch.
Was that amazing stuff in there? Amazing, huh?
Yeah.
How long? What's the time frame?
500 pages. Well, this was all the missions that they did starting in 1961 through 1994 when they finally dissolved the company, which happened to be the same year that Bill Jackson realized he was dying of arterial sclerosis and Parkinson's disease. But he was a medical doctor. So it was then that he sold this document that he had purchased in Rome back in 1971. And we're only in the last several years have realized what he actually did with that material, which is incredible. But what the Cremona document he bought in Rome belonged to, at that time, a family named Benvenuto. And they were going to donate it to the Vatican, but he ended up getting to them first. He bought it. And then he chased down as much of the material as he could. And like I said, we haven't fully realized everything that he did until recently, now that we're getting everything.
Wow.
And the story just keeps getting more and more incredible. But what he did was he sold a certain amount of the material to the Vatican in 1994. But what he never told anybody was that he pulled out the most important parts and he disseminated them to his colleagues in the agency with strict instructions that upon their deaths, this material would go to Don Rue. And there was one letter in the John Drake estate that where Bill Jackson writes a letter and he says, I would leave this material to my best friend, Don Rue, because he was the only one that took my research seriously. I can't remember what else he said. I'm drawing a blank now, but he basically, and he took my research seriously and he was my best friend. And, the other thing that we talk about is that Don never married, never had kids. So there's no family. And he was always available to go on these expeditions with Bill. And Don says, and he always said the magic words, I'll pay.
Okay.
So were they Freemasons? Were they members of the fraternity?
I've asked him that. I know that Jackson's father was a Mason.
Okay.
But Don says that he wasn't, but I'm not totally convinced of that.
What state was he in?
New York.
I bet you can call the Grand Lodge and they would have the archives of it.
It gets a little complicated, brother. Okay. And I'll tell you why. Bill's father was originally from Ireland, and back in the 20s and 30s, he immigrated here to the States. And he was involved. You ever heard of the IRA?
Yeah. I might have heard of him.
I think you might have heard of him.
Yeah.
Well, he was heavily involved in recruiting Irish businesses to donate money to the cause. And sometimes they weren't exactly doing things
above board, maybe
lawfully.
Yeah.
And eventually he was arrested and given the option of you can either tell us what you know or we're going to put you in prison for an awfully long time. And he had a young son at the time whose name would be Bill. And so he decided to cooperate. And because he did that, he had to go in the witness protection program and he was given the name of Jackson. So you see where I'm going.
Yeah, I see where you're going.
Yeah.
So,
it's a little bit different.
So anyway, I can tell you that this story has so many tentacles that are so interesting and so fun. And Don, I feel so fortunate that Don put his trust in us. And, and I'll tell you what, I give Don a lot of credit because, he's a born again Christian.
Oh.
And it happened because of one of his missions.
Oh. Interesting.
And yeah, it's a really, really good story. And it's almost unbelievable, but I read the report and saw the pictures.
Wow.
And
were we talking something that's esoteric, something that's
do we have time for it?
Oh, I mean, let me see if producer Mike can give us the thumbs up.
We got a thumbs up.
You'll like this story. It's a good one.
I got 2 thumbs up.
Right.
Okay, so I'll just start. So in I think it's 1973. There was a woman who used to be married to a Canadian politician, a well-known politician. And there are times when I can't use names.
Mm-hmm,
I'm
understand.
not going to use the
That's
name.
Yeah.
Who passed away.
Okay.
And she remarried a really bad guy who was in a motorcycle gang. And this is in 1973.
They like bad boys,
Well, apparently.
Think of a Canadian motorcycle gang right now, and it just boggles my mind with just all denim. Canadian tuxedo, just all denim on a motorcycle.
No, but she was living in New York.
Oh, okay.
Okay, she was living in New York.
Okay, that makes more sense.
She used to be in Canada, then down there, and she had a daughter. Her name was Haley, and it was the previous husband's daughter, and she was 8 years old at the time.
Okay.
And so what happened is this guy that married her beat his wife, he thought, to death. But she survived. And she had some brain damage, but she actually recovered. She was okay eventually. But when they got to her, she was near death, and she identified the guy, and he kidnapped the daughter.
Oh, no.
And so all of a sudden, law enforcement, and this became like, because she had been married to an international politician, it was not just everyday cops,
Right.
The State Department got involved. But in any case, what happened was they looked into everything, and they learned that the bad guy had a father who had a cabin out in the Catskill Mountains. So somebody made a call with the military to Dan Spartan and said, can you send your guys out to recon this cabin and see if there's anything going on there?
Right.
They had flown a helicopter over, and they saw motorcycles parked. So they thought this might be them. And it was. So anyway, so Don and Bill Jackson, John Drake, and I forget the fourth guy's name. He was the guy that carried the sawed-off shotgun, because I read about him in the reports a few times. Anyway, so they show up, and what they were told to do was to find out if they were there, if the girl was there, and what her condition was, and then get out of there and let law enforcement take over. So they went there, and it was, they were there, and they had taken all of her clothes off and tied her to a tree with chains. And what the plan was to kill her, because in his mind, he had killed his wife and she was the only heir. So for whatever reason, they didn't want any sign of sexual assault or trauma. They were going to leave her outside and let her die of exposure, because in the mountains, it gets cold quick. So Don, and Don's telling the story. The first time he told me the story, I'm like,
yeah.
Right.
This the whole time. So what he did is they waited for them to put out the candle, and he told us all these details. They had to wait 30 minutes after the lights went out before they could do anything, because they just didn't want to alarm them. And so he crawls down, and he realized there's 3 locks on these chains, and Don was the lock picker. He got the first 2 real quick, he said, but the third one he couldn't get, so he has to saw the chain. And he's working on that. He finally gets it. Well, there was another detail that happened. At one point, the bad guy comes out to take a piss, and he pissed on her, and she had duct tape on her mouth, and he took a razor blade and he cut it, and then he put a straw in her mouth, and he gave her some orange juice. And Don was telling the story, and he goes, and if you think he was being kind to her, he said, that just gets her system going and she'll die faster of.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh. Anyway, so then he goes back down again and he finally got it undone. He took his sweater off, he covered her, he picked her up, and he started to carry her off. And he had taken the duct tape off her mouth. And of course, she's all upset and he's telling her, be quiet, be quiet. And then he's climbing up this hill. Now, Don is 6'8" and real svelte guy. And he's climbing up this hill and he slipped and he dropped her. And she yelped.
Mm-hmm.
And then the lights went on, the candles went on, and then it's on, right?
Yeah.
So he grabs her and he runs off and he tells the story. He goes, well, the one guy ran into the gravel pit. I heard the shotgun go off. He was dead. And then another guy goes running down this path and Bill had set up, because he had been in Korea.
Oh, so he had explosives.
He set up this spike and it came up and it gutted the guy. He bled out. And he said, and then the fourth guy was there with his girlfriend and he went to start the bikes and get out of there. Poosh. But they both lived. They didn't die.
Wow.
And when you read these reports, a lot of times there's an epilogue and he became a priest after that.
Wow.
And then the fourth guy, of course, is the bad guy, and he's going after Don. And Don says that they were running, he's carrying her and he's going through the woods. And they got to this point where they went up on this old railroad bed that was now like a hiking trail and a biking trail. And he left her down, in the ditch there, and he gets up on the thing and he's going to look around and he's standing there and he turns around and the guy's got a gun pointed at his forehead. And I'm sitting there and Don's telling the story and I'm like, he pointed a gun at you? Yes. I go, well, what happened? He pulled the trigger. I go, well, what happened? He fell dead. He fell dead? What are you talking about? Well, how did he die? He had a heart attack. I'm like, shut up.
Wow.
I mean, it was just like that. I'm almost yelling at him, and I'm like, what? And I'm like, Don, like, that's bullshit,
Right. Yeah.
And then he goes, believe what you want. And I subsequently read the report.
Right.
So they got out of there. They took her and she was fine. Right. So anyway, and then the mother recovered. And of course, that guy's probably still in prison if he's even alive now. No, he's dead. That's right. He had a heart attack. He died. Anyway, so, and then I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, he said, you want to hear the rest of the story?
Yeah.
I'm like,
sure.
He said, I think it was 4 years later, Dan Spartan rented out a gun range and they cleared everybody out. And he brought the same gun, not the actual gun, but the same model. Don had pulled the bullet out and took it. And he said, we went into the gun range. We put the bullet into the chamber. Pow! Jesus Christ has been my Lord and Savior ever since.
Wow.
That's just the way he said it. And so in the report, you can see the bullet and you can see where it misfired. It was off to the side.
So it didn't hit the striker. Wow.
It didn't hit it. And the second one did. You can see there's 2 strikes.
Whoa.
You can't make that up.
No. So somebody was looking out for him.
But years later, this is the crazy part. Years later, the girl, her grandmother had given her the deed to a small gold mine in upstate Vermont. And she wanted to give that to the Spartan people because they saved her life, and Don specifically.
Right.
So they did. And he said that they mined $1 million worth of gold out of there in 2 years.
Wow.
And then the cave collapsed. And then that was it. They pretty much mined it out. It had already been mined out
Before.
But while they were in there was a wall that had the carving of a Tanit symbol. You know what Tanit is? The Phoenician goddess Tanit?
Yeah.
It's got her arms up in the air.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
In Vermont?
In Vermont, upstate Vermont. Anyway, they figured out that this carving was not on a cave of the wall or a wall of the cave. It was a separate stone.
That was inlaid?
And so Vincentio, who was the demolitions expert, drilled a hole through it, put a clamp that opened up, and they pulled it out.
Whoa.
And inside there was a case, a leather case that had some vellum in it with a code.
Hmm.
And they took pictures of it. But when they took it out of the cave, it disintegrated really quickly.
Whoa.
So anyway, that was in 1980. In 2021, and it had an anagram, a cipher phrase that they couldn't crack.
Right.
We cracked it in 2021, and we got the message.
Whoa.
And it was a part of the Book of the Wars of the Lord.
Whoa.
That talked about Yah and Weh being male and female.
Damn.
How's that for a crazy story?
That's where the whole thing comes together.
Yeah.
And this is all going to be part of your newest book that's
Yeah,
going to be
all
coming
this
out?
stuff it's all in there, and 50 times more. This book is going to be, actually what we've already decided, it's going to be 2 volumes because it's going to be like that thick. And actually there is a logical break point, because we get the whole background leading all the way up to when we realized that what Jackson had actually done, that he had left stuff for Don with all these guys. And later on, he had like a secession list. Well, if this guy's dead, if Don's dead, that goes to this guy and this guy and this guy. And later on, once we were corresponding with Dan Spartan before he died, I was corresponding with him. And after reading those reports, I was so impressed because, for example, let's say the 5 of us went on a mission. You'd write a report, you'd write a report, you'd write a report, you'd write one, I'd write one.
Yep.
Then Spartan would take all those reports and write the final report.
Huh.
That's what I read were the final report.
Oh, wow. So he was the
guy. And I got to tell you, he was so impressive. And I said to Don one time, this is the year before he died. I said, is there any way I could meet this guy? I said, I'll fly to wherever he is. And then I got a letter from Dan Spartan, and he said, word has reached me that you would like to meet me.
Oh, shit.
He said, the man you knew as the man that was known as Dan Spartan died in 1996 when Don helped him fake his death.
Whoa. Nice.
And I read that story too. And he said, and he went on, he wrote this beautiful letter. Remember that?
That's amazing.
And then a year and a half later, he died.
He died.
So I never got to meet him.
These guys have seen some shit.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So after I read those 500 pages,
Yeah.
I called Don up and I go, Don, I said, this shit's fantastic. This would make a television series. It would be amazing.
Yeah.
And I go, what are you going to do with this stuff when you pass? He goes, it's going to you.
Nice.
Nice.
But he said, you're not going to do anything with that material till I'm dead.
Nice.
And he's how old now?
83, December 7th. We got a gift for him in the car.
That's awesome.
A birthday gift. We're going to give it to him.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's amazing. So did any of that stuff involve UFOs?
Of course, we got, because we're running the gambit.
I'm
You
just
had
saying.
to go there.
I just wanted to ask it out loud. It might
Okay,
have.
you want the simple answer?
Yes.
Yep.
But there we go. I knew it.
Yes, it does.
It does.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure those guys probably had a hand in part of that.
Well, let's just put it this way. As we got into the later messages, well, no, the remember I told you about the page that was folded that we never paid attention to?
Yeah.
It was there the whole time. And that was why Jackson sold it to the Vatican, because they did not want that to get out.
So that's why the Vatican was interested and would pay for it.
And also the goddess is omnipresent in that document, and they didn't want that to get out either.
Right.
Well, you've seen my lecture, right?
Yeah.
Remember how else do you interpret that?
It's the goddess.
I mean, and then did a silver beast with wings like a bird descend from the clouds? What the hell is that?
A UFO. In my mind, I don't know what else it could be.
Well, when I read that, I'm like, no way, don't. Really. What else could it be?
Mm-hmm. With lightning shooting from it, right? Yeah.
It spat lightning bolts and the people of the chariots died, the horses died. But you know something else? And I can't remember where I heard this, but apparently in the Bible somewhere is the story of this lead up to this conflict with the sons of Dan and the Edomites.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a big chunk that's missing.
Yeah.
And then it picks up again. This is that piece that's missing.
Oh, wow. The piece of the battle,
Yeah.
the war.
Yeah, but the battle with the goddess running the show and calling out an alien. Gee, I can see where they took that out.
That'd probably be something they would pay for.
That's something they did pay for. But thanks to Bill, he left the photos.
That's amazing. The thing that got me too was, this is an aside, but it's kind of connected, was that the Templar treasure that we all know and think of, you think of gold and diamonds and jewels, but there was more than that.
Way
more than that. There were potential actual bones of.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
It doesn't.
You mean relics? Are you talking
We're talking about biological
relics? Yes.
Well, I'll tell you what. Wait till we get into the Cremona Document. Holy crap!
Some biological things connected.
Really?
One of my close friends who's in the field asked me to ask you if that team, the team that you're aware of, Don's team and everybody, were ever charged with retrieving biologics.
Well, I will tell you, it's not written in any documents, but if I told you the whole story, you would agree with me that, yes, they were dealing. Jackson was. I don't believe Don was.
Okay.
Jackson was for sure.
Got it. Yeah. There's a thread that's running. I mean, I basically got shut down, shadow banned. You talk about trolls and everything got shut down, but I started doing research and public research about DNA. I'm going to talk about DNA and DNA in connection to the phenomenon and how there's some high level connections in the government and public research into currently, I'm just going to call them out. I don't care. Gary Nolan, Kit Green, some of the guys that are part of the whole Arrow program and the new disclosure movement have been for years asking for people's blood that have had experiences with the phenomenon. So like UFOs.
When you say phenomenon, what do you mean? Do you mean like abductions or
abductions, UFOs, entities, balls of lights, things like that? Conscious interactions with things not of this world, not human intelligence, right? So if you've had any interaction with it, they're very interested in your DNA. And this is one of the things, like and all I did was repost a clip of another podcast that a guy named Andrew Razowitz had was on James Indoli's podcast called Engaging the Phenomenon, who said, hey, Gary Nolan wanted my DNA. So I posted that. Tom DeLonge reposted it, and it had like 10 million views. And I got a call from Gary Nolan, said, take that shit down. And I'm like, why? I didn't say it. It was this guy named Andrew. He's like, yeah, take it down. We're not doing it. And then I got completely shadow banned. Like I got, now views, like you don't find me anywhere online anymore because of all this. So I started talking to Andrew and I dug into it more. And basically what they're trying to do, and they've kind of been successful with Dean Radin and Dr. Dean Radin and a couple other people, was they want to figure out how they can turn the phenomenon on or off in normal people. So they've created basically a nasal spray now. It's because it passes the blood-brain barrier based on all the research they've done, that you do this and for a set amount of time, you become basically super psychic.
Super psychic.
Yeah. So basically all the things that you can do interact with phenomenon, you can.
Really?
Yes. So they've done that because based on my research, is they want to be able to sell that to the military industrial complex. So think about a group of special ops guys that are all completely telepathic. You don't need comms. You don't need anything.
Super soldiers
That are super psychic as well, right?
Well, they used to do remote viewing and then MK Ultra and all this stuff. And
so
really
right.
appreciate us getting shadow banned here on All Square Podcast. Just passing that along with us. Mike's going to love that.
Buy this book.
Buy this book and get shadow banned. It's going to be great.
It's going to be amazing. But that's what really shut me down. So the whole, like, it's a real thing. Dean Radin was like, he's you know, is a paranormal a doctor. He's amazing. He came out on a podcast like 3 months ago now. Probably was like, this is what we're doing. If something happens to me, this is where we're going. And this is what happens in research. And this is a guy who's been in the field for 30, 40 years.
Okay. Well, finish your thought, and then I want to piggyback on something you just said.
So, like, the big deal is like, if anybody wants to talk about it, they got shut down. But basically, they took some people's DNA against their will. Yeah, believe it or not. And was basically imagine that we're taking your blood. We want to figure out what's going on. So they have this thing with blood and blood types and like ancestry and things that also that people.
But how do they identify the people that they want the blood from?
Well, that's the fun part as well. So, like, if you're public and you go out and say, "Hey, I had this experience," if you're a public person, okay. So there's that, but there's also they also have said, and a couple people, Lynn Buchanan got on a podcast, who was one of the first remote viewers, head of the program, and said they have back doors inside of Ancestry DNA, inside of 23andMe, and they're looking for a specific marker to know where everybody is, and they know who these people are.
Huh.
And I was like, oh, that's great. So cool. That's a big deal.
Okay, so you remember we talked about Holden.
Yes, Holden is another name that shows up. Holden is a guy that... So I knew about Holden from my friend Jay Anderson from Project Unity, who came to him.
I think he's either tomorrow, or I think he's going on.
He's going to go on Joe Rogan tomorrow. Yeah. So Jay's going to be on Joe Rogan tomorrow. But
what's he going to talk about? Egypt?
I think he's going to talk about a lot about Egypt and about what's going on there and his connection there. And Jay's been to Peru, and he's been just trying, get to the bottom of it. And he started to the whole thing, UFOs is the same thing he and I did, and the consciousness, and basically going outside and meditating. Robbie and I did this in a field. We meditated, and we had orange orbs appear, right?
Yep.
You can do it. It actually happens.
Chris Bledsoe.
Pretty much.
That was, we'll keep the location. I don't think we ever mentioned where that happened, but yeah, we did have some interesting stuff happen with some fellow individuals of ours.
Yeah. So is this like CE5?
Pretty much, yeah. We did CE5. There was like 12 or 13 of us who sat in the middle of the field. We meditated for 25 minutes, and orange orb showed up on the sky 2 nights in a row, mind you.
Wow. You still have the videos.
Okay, still have videos, and they're on my YouTube channel, so go look at them.
So my question with Holden is, when he first contacted me, one of the things that he said was they got a directive in 2017 that essentially the government was going to stop with this withholding information, stop going after whistleblowers,
stop getting the black van to show up and throw you in the thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That they were going to completely change their strategy and be open about it. And that's why we're contacting you. And, it went on from there. But that would suggest to me, why are they, well, maybe just, now that I think about it, maybe just talking about UFOs in general and disclosure in general is one thing, but going after people's DNA, that's a different project, isn't it?
Yeah.
So maybe I answered my own question.
Yeah, and I think it's all interrelated. So it's consciousness, it's UFOs, it's ancient archaeology, sure. it's buried history, things that are all intertwined. In
one of the messages that we got, and I talk about this in some of my lectures, CLY writes, I saw the lights again. The right one descended upon my winter lodge, and there stood the likeness of Amon, not a man.
Amon.
It's definitely an O. And Janet and I went through it how many times, but it's definitely an O. And you have to understand that these things are scripto continua. There isn't, separations, word separators. You have to make the words. So Amon took a little while, but that's what it says.
Wow.
But the other thing is, in 1898, there were no planes flying around. There were no helicopters. What are the lights again? And all of a sudden the guy shows up. But then it goes on and it talks about, he spake unto me in the language of the people. And then he says, but not my native tongue, English. Can thee understand me? And the way it's written, they're not talking.
It's
like telepathic.
It's telepathy.
Telepathy?
Yeah. I mean, isn't that the way it strikes you?
Yeah.
So, so that's how they communicate. And, I remember when I was going through my education, prep, if you will, there were a lot of articles and papers I read where people that had experiences, they were with an alien, that it was all telepathy.
Right.
They weren't talking. And it just rang so true when that message came. And basically that was the one where CLY was sent to recover the Book of the Wars of the Lord, which contains aliens and a dual-gendered God religion, which the world was not ready for in 1898, neither one of those.
Right.
And so they took it back.
And just for context, for some people who are trying to put all this together, CLY is who?
Oh, okay. So let me just, so in the Cremona Document, one of the things that we learn is that starting in 1308 was the first time that all the Templar records were updated. All their maps, all their correspondence, that was all encrypted. And they did that about every 150 years or so. Okay. And there was one person who was tasked with that duty, and his name was always Clyphus Licinius Jarbo. Now, that's an alias, obviously.
Right.
I mean, if you're keeping track of the Templar records and treasure locations, people might want to talk to you.
Yeah.
So, but they spelled it a little differently each time, and the sigla is a little different. So you know what generation you're dealing with, which is kind of cool. But the last update of the records was done in 1908. But the guy that did it, CLY, who also was married to an indigenous woman and had an indigenous name, it's actually Mohawk. It was Talico, which means gray eagle. And but he's the guy that we're talking about who was summoned by the Angel K, who we hear from in the last 4.5 years or so. We hear from him a lot, and he's an alien.
Wow. It's
this Holden guy, to preface, because you want to come full circle, because nobody knows what the hell we're talking about. But this was a guy who's intelligence, military intelligence, one of the agencies, was tasked with
NASIG, the National Air and Space Investigative Center,
right, which is in Dayton, Ohio. Basically, one of the main bases is in Wright Pat.
That's where we met and had dinner with him one time.
Yes, so
we were driving through.
Yeah, so he basically became a liaison, or whatever his deal was to contact people that could be in the public eye or could be in the know to spread whatever that they wanted to spread at the time. This is my interpretation. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's exactly what it was. He asked me if I would be if I would,
help
be
with
willing
disclosure.
to help with disclosure. And the first thing I want to know is, are you who you say you are?
Right.
He convinced us of that. And so, that's what we were doing for a while, but it got to a point with him where his personal problems, he was a heavy drinker. And he got to the point where he was trying to manipulate me. And I wasn't having it.
Yeah.
And so we had a falling out.
Yep.
I still, because of that, we had the falling out, but we have had a couple of times since then where, we've had pleasantries. I mean, I don't hate the guy,
right,
but I just didn't appreciate what
he did. Yeah.
he was trying to do.
Yeah. And it seems like that's been the MO from the IC since forever, is just give you all the stuff that you need to know, get whatever I need to get out there. And then
you could make the argument that was manipulation too, but I was complicit in it from the standpoint that, okay, if this is real, then and the message is going to be helpful, at the end of the day to humanity, then I'm all in.
Right. Of course.
And in some ways you look at that as it's a higher calling in one way, but I was always a little bit nervous, and we, Janet and I talked about it quite a bit, am I being used for something that I'm going to regret down the road?
Of course.
Right.
And I didn't really see it until he started
with his quirks and his things.
I don't know if I really want to get into it.
No, of course.
It got to the point where, we almost came to blows.
Yeah. Well, and in that case, and that's the story I've heard of my friend Jay was the same. It was like, you're going to, same kind of pattern of just bullshit, like where at some point he was feeding Jay verifiable bullshit just to just to see if he, Jay would take it or not. And Jay was like, this is actually bullshit. Like, I know this is, whatever. Right.
Well, he's, first and foremost, Holden was a very bright guy. There's no question about it. He was a sharp guy.
Right.
And, we got to know him well enough, assuming that his personal story was true, which I think it was. He was recruited right out of high school, and
a lot of them are.
His commanding officer is what he would call him, recruited him out of high school, and what he would do was a lot of boots on the ground stuff, and he would go in to play. He told us the stories about going into buildings where kids were being trafficked, being held. And there was one time where he said a guy was wired and blew himself up, and he was on the other side of the wall and was badly injured, and injured to the point where he could no longer do the boots on the ground stuff. And so they basically gave him this desk job. And there were a couple times when he had been drinking that his bitterness and anger was obvious. It was palpable. And I felt sorry for him,
Right.
I'd be honest with you. I liked Holden. We got along really great until he started with, he was fucking with me. And it was at the time when we were about to have the 20th anniversary gathering of all the people that worked at the Pentagon after 9/11. And it was a really big deal, and it was important to me. And that's some of the work I'm most proud of, and he started in on some stuff, and I wasn't having it. And not only was I there, but I know the first guy that was in the building. He's a very good friend, very close friend, Leo Titus. And he started saying things that I knew were not true. And I questioned him, what are you saying this shit for?
Right. Right.
And it was 3 weeks before this, this gathering that we had that was amazing. And we got together with Leo. We had a long conversation about people like that. And he's I wear my emotions on my sleeve. You know where I'm coming from. If I'm upset, you'll know. And if I'm having a good time, you'll know. Leo he's a structural engineer. He's a very introverted type of guy. He's smart as all get out. But this was one of the few times I ever saw him get emotional.
Wow.
When we talked about this kind of thing, because he's heard it too. And anyway, but that was a mistake that Holden made. But I don't want to sit here and paint him out to be a horrible person. He's not. He's been through a lot, and he's gave a lot, literally, of
in
his
service to the
blood
country.
to this country.
Right. And I'm not denying that. For me, it's always just to see the, duplicity and the tactics and the way that the government tries to help, push disclosure and the people that are involved in it. And it's interesting to have the first person perspective from two different sides of the pond, because Jay's over in England, and we're here in America. So it's to see how it was treated for both ways.
But there's some pretty strong parallels there.
Yeah, definitely some parallels there. And not to say, it's the MO always is like, here's a bunch of truth, and a little bit of bullshit, or vice versa. Here's a bunch of bullshit and a little bit of truth. So,
but that's how the government operates. That's just their modus operandi, and they're always trying to keep you off balance a little bit. And if you aren't aware of that, you could be vulnerable to manipulation.
Yeah.
And
thank you for that. I mean, I appreciate it because clear it up. I know a lot of people have asked me about it, and I know that you were the only person besides Jay that I know that have had direct interaction with the same guy.
Yeah.
And he's going to be on Joe Rogan either within
Jay
the
is,
next.
Jay
he's on his way there today. He posted about it.
Yeah.
And
So
I told
Jay
him
did or Eric?
Yeah. Jay. So Jay and I, we text like every day. So Jay, he's going to be there. So he should be tomorrow. Should be the show. And I think he said the 18th. I think is going to be.
Wow.
He's going to be out. They probably put it on. But
good for him.
Yeah, it's good that he's been pushing it. So yeah, he's probably going to talk about all of it. So I don't know if the whole thing's going to come up. I doubt it, but. Who knows? It goes.
Is he going to talk about Holden?
I don't know, but it's circled back up because it's circling back up on Twitter that somebody else, like I said, somebody tried to contact the guy through the official channels to interview him because of his, Holden. Through an ASIC, so it didn't happen. It got shut down.
I can guarantee you that's not going to happen.
Yeah, so they got it all shut down. They wouldn't even, say he was a real person. Obviously, wouldn't even
He's
deny
a real
him.
person. How many times at the house? 3 times.
Yeah.
He stayed with us. And I don't, like I said, we had a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
And he was a good guy, but he had some quirks.
But the interesting part
he'd say the same thing. I got quirks too. So.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is that there's a directive from an agency or like a known entity in the U.S. government that's trying to push the UFO disclosure narrative out to the wider public.
But at the same time, we're not getting disclosure
at all
from the government.
It's always the same thing. It's always the intelligence agents that come a former intelligence going to tell you all about it.
And I don't know what's the end game. I don't understand what the end game is.
I don't think there is one.
Look, we know that there are extraterrestrials. We know they've been here for a long time.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about them. If they wanted to kill us, we'd be dead.
Yeah.
So, I'm just talking to the everyday person.
Of course.
I mean, there's a hell of a lot more to it than that. It's a lot more complicated than that. But at the end of the day, it's also that simple.
It is.
And there's nothing to fear. And it's exciting. It's kind of nice to know that we're not the only ones here. My favorite show of all time is Star Trek. And, Gene Roddenberry was a brother.
Yep. And he was very connected and had some information.
Well, and don't think that the government didn't have a say
yes.
in those episodes, but the way that they were written was so beautiful, and you watch them today and
they still hold up. Yeah.
And they're still relevant. William Shatner, he's the cockiest dude ever, but I think he's amazing.
Yeah.
I love him as Captain Kirk.
We kind of the future we want, really. I mean, cool to find out that there was, other brothers Masons on other planets.
Oh yeah, I mean that would be phenomenal. Like this.
Why wouldn't they? I mean, we call it the human experience, but it's experience of life, and so I don't know if I don't think Masonry is reserved for humans necessarily. Just humans.
Yeah.
It's an enlightenment movement.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
They learn, they grow, they make mistakes. I assume they have families, and they're probably not that much different.
No. We just took it way different. So if you guys got to this point in the podcast and you're still here,
how did we get here?
It's my amazing.
That's why I'm the co-host.
Yeah,
that's what you get.
Exactly. That's why we put you on in the middle between us. The road between two thorns.
That's right.
Listen, we are already hit over 2 hours.
Yes.
This has been incredible.
This has been fun as hell, man.
Yeah. Man, I want to get your wife on talking. You guys got an open invitation to All Square.
All right.
Me and John love working together.
Yeah. You're always in my pocket, obviously.
Well,
doors always open.
What are some links and some upcoming things that you want people to be aware of?
Well,
this book is amazing. Go get this book.
I'm going to be doing the Matt Bell show on the 28th of January. I'm looking forward to that. And on the way down, we're going to be meeting with our good friend Randall Carlson, spending a few days with him and recording some content. And
love to get him on the show.
Yeah.
I'll mention it to him. We'll
Brother
mention
Randall,
it to him.
Tell him we said hello.
Well, I'll get to the website.
And
by the way, if people are interested, this book doesn't officially launch until February 10th.
Cool.
Oh,
So then you can't buy it on Amazon yet. The only place you can buy it is on my website, which is scottfwolter.com. And I sign and personalize every copy.
yes. Thank you. brother.
And so if you're interested in that, check it out. And what else have we got going? There's a lot of things that are in the hopper. If you haven't seen it, I want you to, I encourage people to watch on Gaia, our show with brother Tim Hogan, who co-hosted with me, Mysteries of the Knights Templar.
Amazing
There's
series.
a very good chance we'll be doing a season 2.
Oh, great.
So that's coming. My blog, if people want to interact with me, I've got every episode of America Unearthed I wrote a blog for. I don't blog on there as much as I used to, but there's still some great content on there. I will answer every question. And if you're a troll, you will get beat down. So just warning you ahead of time.
Sometimes I tag you on Twitter and it's okay.
And I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram and Facebook, of course.
Yeah.
And we just got a lot of good stuff coming here. And the new book, of course.
When are we expecting now it sounds like 2 books.
It's going to be 2 volumes, and we've decided that the title right now is going to be The Templars' Hooked X Covenant in America, the definitive Cremona Document, and it'll be 2 volumes. And we just had a meeting last week with an artist, and we have a cover design
Nice.
that's going to be 2 parts. That's going to be so freaking cool. I can't wait. And one more thing I want to tell you about the Cremona Document that we really have not said anything about.
Uh-oh. We got exclusive.
And that is that some of the coolest and best information is in invisible messages.
No way.
Really?
I'm not kidding you. I mean, in fact, Don told us stories, and there are photographs that you will see in the book. Way back in like the 70s and 80s, they used to expose the pages to lemon juice and heat,
Right.
just like National Treasure on the back of the Declaration of Independence. It was the same method. And this method, of course, when we first started seeing these invisible messages that come out with ultraviolet light, black light, they're incredible. And I just said to myself, come on, did that technology exist back in 1908? And the answer is it did.
Wow.
So anyway, and when you see these pictures of these documents, and then a lot of them we flip over, and on the back are invisible messages. And sometimes they're on the face side where the maps, the drawings, or whatever, and you put the black light, and there's a whole nother layer to it.
It's incredible.
It's good stuff. Yeah.
And the book comes out when?
This is February. This new one's February.
Correct.
10th?
This is February 10th.
10th, right?
The official release, but you can get it from me now. And then the next one, I would say realistically, is probably going to be late summer, early fall.
There you have it. Final comments, John.
Thank you for putting up with me all these years. I love you, brother.
It's all good, brother. It's all good.
And thank you for putting up with me. And Mike, you're amazing. Thank you. Really appreciate you guys.
And seriously, I have no problem with people punching me out or asking me questions. That's how we learn. That's how, you get your questions answered. There's no reason why I shouldn't be able to handle that stuff. So
no.
Bring it, baby.
No. I liked it. I'm just like, this is amazing. I can't believe this chick threw it in the dumpster. That was my biggest grip.
We know Diana.
Yeah.
And she is capable of that.
I imagine. Yeah. I imagine now that I know it.
Scott, we've talked about everything, literally everything on this episode. And it's so exciting stuff what you're doing. My last question to you to take us off the air. What do you want to be remembered for?
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a great one.
I couldn't even answer that question.
I've just worked my ass off to try to get to the truth. There have been so many amazing mysteries and questions that I've been privileged to ponder and work on, and I just want to get to the truth. And I think for the most part, we've done a decent job. So I just hope people remember that that's what I tried to do.
That's my brother, Scott Wolter. With My other brother, John Majorowski, host of UFOs on the Level podcast. Check it out. I'm R.L. Franks, and you are all square. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Love you guys.
Hey, R.L. Franks here. Thanks again for watching today's episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, if you believe someone can benefit from the message that we provided on today's podcast, send it over to them. You may inspire them.